It happened so suddenly that my body didn't have time to react. One moment, everything was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like the air itself is holding its breath. And then, I heard his whisper, "Don't move, he thinks we're dead." The words sliced through the darkness, soft but sharp, trembling but certain. In that instant, my world shrank down to the rhythm of my heartbeat. Every sound around me felt magnified: the rustle of leaves, the ticking of my own pulse, the echo of fear in my chest. I didn't dare breathe. I didn't dare think. I only felt. Fear has a strange way of taking over your body before your mind can make sense of it. It freezes you in place, convinces you that stillness is safety, that if you just pretend not to exist, danger will pass. And that's what I did. I stayed still. I became invisible. And in that paralyzing stillness, something inside me cracked open, a realization that this moment, this fear, wasn't just about surviving the outside threat. It was a mirror, a reflection of all the times I'd been told, in one way or another, not to move. "Don't move," had lived inside me long before that whisper in the dark. It had echoed in every moment I stayed silent to keep the peace, in every time I swallowed my truth so someone else wouldn't feel uncomfortable, in every situation where I let myself fade just to avoid conflict. It wasn't always a man with a weapon that made me play dead, it was life itself. The quiet expectations, the unspoken rules, the fear of being seen for who I really was. As I lay there, frozen in that moment, something became clear to me. Survival isn't always about running or fighting. Sometimes it's about pretending. Pretending you're fine. Pretending you're strong. Pretending the pain doesn't exist. But the cost of that kind of survival is high. You start losing pieces of yourself, small ones at first, then larger ones, until you wake up one day realizing that you've survived everything, except your own life. And there, in that silence, I understood what fear does. It doesn't just protect you from danger, it imprisons you in it. I could feel my husband's hand, tense, trembling, holding on to mine, both of us waiting, both of us praying that the danger would pass. But inside, I also realized that for years, I'd been waiting for something to pass: the grief, the guilt, the fear of not being enough. I had been playing dead long before anyone thought I was. When you're trapped between terror and survival, time moves differently. Seconds stretch into hours. And in that stretched out silence, I started to see things with a clarity I hadn't before. I saw the truth about how easily we can lose our voices in the noise of fear. How we can mistake silence for safety. How we can forget that even when everything feels out of our control, we still have one small power left: the choice to breathe, to feel, to remember that we are still alive. That whisper, "Don't move, he thinks we're dead," wasn't just a warning that night. It was a message life had been trying to tell me for years, that as long as I kept pretending to be dead emotionally, spiritually, or truthfully, I'd never truly live. That fear would always win if I kept choosing stillness over truth. When danger passes, most people think the story ends. But sometimes, that's exactly where it begins. Because after you've been that still, that scared, you don't just want to survive anymore, you want to live. You want to move again, even if your legs tremble, even if your heart still races. You want to remember what it feels like to breathe deeply, to speak loudly, to exist fully. And that night, even though I couldn't move then, I made myself a quiet promise. The next time fear whispered, I would listen, but I would not obey. There comes a moment in every relationship when love and survival start to blur together. When the line, between comfort and protection becomes so thin you can barely tell which one you're standing on. That night, when I heard him whisper those words, "Don't move, he thinks we're dead," I realized love can look nothing like the stories we grow up believing. It isn't always flowers and laughter and promises whispered under the stars. Sometimes it's a shaking hand holding yours in the dark, praying you both make it to see the morning. Sometimes it's two hearts beating in fear, yet refusing to let go of each other. In that stillness, I could feel his body trembling beside mine, but his grip on my hand never loosened. That single touch said everything words couldn't. "I'm here. I won't let go. Not now." It's strange how love changes shape in moments of danger. The same person you once argued with over forgotten groceries suddenly becomes your anchor, your lifeline. There's something powerful about knowing that even in terror, even when every instinct says, "Run," the person beside you stays. That's when I realized love isn't just about feeling safe. It's about choosing to protect each other when safety is no longer guaranteed. For years, I had believed love was supposed to make life easier, that when you find your person, everything becomes lighter, smoother, softer. But in truth, real love isn't built in moments of ease. It's forged in the fire, tested in storms, and shaped by the things you survive together. There's a different kind of intimacy that grows in silence when words fail, and all you have is faith. Faith that the person next to you will hold steady when the world tilts. Faith that even when the light disappears, their presence will keep you from disappearing with it. I remember thinking, as I lay there, that this wasn't just about escaping danger. It was about the kind of love that makes you still your breath, because your survival is no longer just your own. When two lives become so intertwined that one heartbeat depends on the other, love becomes an act of courage. It's no longer about romance, it's about endurance, about trust that runs deeper than fear. We often imagine love as something that rescues us, but sometimes, love is what we use to hold each other steady until rescue comes. It's the whisper that calms the storm, the hand that steadies the shaking, the quiet that says, "We'll get through this." And maybe that's the kind of love we all need to remember, not the one that dazzles us at first sight, but the one that refuses to abandon us when everything else falls apart. After that night, I started to see our relationship differently. I realized that love isn't something you feel every day. It's something you choose, over and over again, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. It's easy to love when things are beautiful, when life feels generous. But the truest love is revealed in those moments when the world grows cold and you're both too afraid to breathe yet still. You reach for each other. That's the kind of love that outlasts fear. And maybe that's the lesson hidden in that whisper. "Don't move, he thinks we're dead." It wasn't just a plea for survival. It was a vow that even when the world threatens to silence us, love will keep us connected. Even in stillness, even in darkness, we will not let go. Because sometimes, love doesn't roar. It whispers, it trembles, but it never disappears. Fear has a way of entering quietly, almost politely, before it takes over everything. It doesn't announce itself with thunder or chaos, it seeps in like smoke through the cracks of your soul. That night, lying there frozen in the dark, I realized how close fear and faith can feel when you're standing on the edge of both. One pulls you down into silence. The other asks you to believe there's something beyond it. And in that moment, I didn't know which one I was holding on to. My husband's whisper still echoed in my mind. "Don't move, he thinks we're dead." Fear told me to obey, to become invisible, to stay small. But somewhere deep inside, faith whispered something softer, something braver. "You're still here. That's the battle most of us fight without even realizing it, the quiet war between fear and faith. One says, hide. The other says, hope. One freezes your body. The other asks your soul to breathe. It's strange how the body reacts before the heart catches up. My pulse raced. My breath caught in my chest. And every sound felt dangerous. But under that noise, something else stirred, a tiny flicker of belief that maybe we would survive. That maybe we weren't meant to die there. And that, I think, is where faith begins, not in certainty, but in defiance. It's not loud, it's not confident, it's not even calm. It's the trembling decision to believe in the light when all you can see is darkness. In life, we don't always face literal threats. Sometimes the danger is emotional, heartbreak, betrayal, failure, loneliness, the kind that makes you go still inside. We stop speaking up. We stop dreaming. We stop moving. We tell ourselves, if I stay quiet, maybe the pain won't find me. But fear doesn't protect you. It just delays your healing. And that's the tragedy, that so many of us are breathing, walking, smiling. But somewhere inside, we're frozen. We're pretending to be dead because moving hurts too much. Faith. Though faith is the slow return of life, it's the decision to move again, even when your legs still tremble. It's the whisper that says, I don't know how this ends, but I'm still going to believe in something good. Faith doesn't erase fear. It simply reminds you that fear isn't the only voice in the room. That night, lying perfectly still, I started to think about all the times I had lived like that without realizing it. All the times I stopped myself from saying what I needed to say, from doing what I needed to do, because I was afraid of rejection, of judgment, of failure. Fear had disguised itself as safety so many times that I had mistaken stillness for strength. But faith, real faith, asked for movement. Not a sprint, not a leap, just one small, trembling step forward. And when you finally take that step, something shifts. The danger may still be there, but you stop surrendering to it. You stop being defined by what scares you. You realize that survival and living are not the same thing, and that you were never meant to stay frozen. That night taught me something I've never forgotten. Fear will always whisper first, but faith will always whisper last. And the voice you choose to listen to, that's what decides whether you stay still or finally start to live again. That night, when my husband whispered, "Don't move, he thinks we're dead," I remember staring into the darkness, trying to understand who he was. At first, it was literal, a threat, a danger, a shadow that wanted to harm us. But as the silence stretched and my heart pounded, I began to realize that he wasn't just one person. He was something bigger, something we all face in our own lives. The unseen enemy, the one that creeps in quietly, without a sound, and slowly takes hold of everything that once felt safe. For some, that unseen enemy wears the face of betrayal the moment you discover someone you love has been lying to you, and trust shatters like glass underfoot. For others, it's grief, the kind that moves into your home and refuses to leave. Sometimes it's guilt, sometimes shame, sometimes that heavy feeling that no matter how hard you try, you'll never be enough. These enemies don't kick down doors. They slip through the cracks of your mind and whisper in your ear until you start to believe their lies. As I lay there in the dark, I thought about how many times I had already been haunted by those unseen forces. The times I'd doubted my worth, the times I'd stayed quiet to avoid rejection, the times I'd convinced myself that if I just pretended everything was fine, the pain would pass. But that's the thing about hidden enemies, they grow in silence. They feed on denial. They thrive when you pretend they're not there. And that's exactly what fear wants for you: to stay still, to play dead, to give up your power without a fight. Because as long as you believe you're powerless, as long as you believe you're small, the enemy wins without ever lifting a hand. That night, I realized I had been doing that for years, staying quiet when I should have spoken, shrinking when I should have stood tall, retreating when I should have reached out. I had been fighting invisible battles in my heart long before that real danger appeared in front of me. Sometimes, the scariest enemy isn't out there in the world, it's the one inside of us. The voice that says, "You can't." The one that tells you you're not strong enough, not worthy enough, not lovable enough. That's the he we all carry. The shadow that watches from the corners of our own fears. And the hardest part is, we often let that voice win without even realizing it. We call it being realistic, being careful, being humble. But really, it's just the unseen enemy, wearing a mask. There in that darkness, holding my breath, I understood something. You can't always fight what you can't see, but you can refuse to surrender to it. The moment you stop believing its lies, it begins to lose power. The moment you say, "I see you," it starts to fade. It doesn't disappear overnight, but awareness is the first step toward freedom. And when the danger outside finally passed, when the silence began to loosen its grip, I knew that what almost destroyed me that night wasn't just the person who threatened us, it was everything I'd let live inside me unchecked. The doubt, the fear, the guilt, that was the real enemy, the one that needed to die for me to live again. Sometimes the monsters we fear most don't stand in front of us, they live quietly inside us. But the moment we stop pretending they're not there, that's the moment we start to win. When the silence finally broke, it wasn't with noise, it was with realization, the kind that crawls into your chest and sits there, heavy and undeniable. I remember lying there, listening to the faintest sounds outside, my body still frozen from fear, but my mind beginning to wake up. There's something about being that close to danger that strips everything unnecessary away. You stop pretending. You stop performing. All that's left is the truth, raw, trembling, and waiting to be acknowledged. For a long time after that night, I couldn't shake the image of myself lying still, waiting for something outside me to change. I kept thinking, how many times had I done that long before this moment? How many times had I stayed quiet when I needed to speak? How many times had I waited for life to rescue me while I played dead? That realization hit me harder than the fear ever did. I wasn't just pretending to be dead that night, I'd been doing it for years in different ways. There's a strange comfort in pretending nothing's wrong. It feels safe, even familiar. You convince yourself that silence equals peace, that stillness equals control. But the truth is, every time we numb our voices to keep the world calm, we lose a little more of ourselves. The person we were meant to be gets buried under layers of fear, compromise, and exhaustion. And one day, you wake up realizing you've survived everything but you've forgotten how to live. The awakening doesn't come with fanfare, it comes quietly, often when you're most broken. It's that soft inner voice that says, "No more. No more shrinking, no more pretending, no more waiting for someone else to save you." I remember that shift inside me, that small but powerful decision to stop lying still, not just with my body, but with my spirit. Because the danger outside that night might have ended, but the danger of staying silent was still alive inside me. And that's when I began to understand what courage really means. It's not about charging into the fire. It's about finally facing the ashes of what's been left behind. It's about admitting that you've been hiding from yourself, from your pain, from your truth. Courage begins the moment you stop pretending that being safe is the same as being whole. I learned that healing doesn't start when the danger is gone, it starts when you choose to wake up after it. That awakening isn't graceful. It's messy, it's painful, and it's lonely. Because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. You start noticing all the places you've gone numb in your marriage, your friendships, your work, your dreams. You start realizing how many of your choices were made out of fear instead of faith. And yet, even in that discomfort, there's a strange kind of beauty, because for the first time, you're not pretending. You're alive in your pain, your confusion, your hope. You're feeling again, and that means you're healing. The most powerful part of waking up is that it doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small, defiant acts of honesty. It's in saying no when silence would be easier. It's in speaking the truth when your voice still shakes. It's in forgiving yourself for all the times you stayed still. And it's in realizing that even if the world once thought you were dead, you're still here breathing. Broken maybe, but alive. That night taught me that the only way to come back to life is to stop pretending you're not already alive. When morning finally came, the light felt different. It wasn't soft or comforting, it was sharp. Almost intrusive, cutting through everything that had been hidden in the dark. I remember blinking against it, realizing that somehow, against every odd, we were still here. Alive, breathing. And for a moment, I didn't know what to do with that. Survival sounds like victory, but when you've spent so long frozen, pretending, and holding your breath, simply existing feels unfamiliar. You don't just return to life, you have to relearn it. In those quiet days that followed, I found myself thinking about what it means to truly live again after you've been through something that tried to break you. At first, I thought surviving was enough, that waking up was proof of strength. But survival isn't the end. It's the beginning of a harder journey, learning to move again when fear has taught you to stay still. Because the body might heal, but the mind takes time to believe it's safe to breathe, to trust, to try again. I started noticing how often I still hesitated, how I still held my breath when doors creaked or shadows moved, how I still listened for danger in silence. Fear has a way of leaving echoes, and those echoes don't fade overnight. But somewhere inside, a new voice began to grow, a whisper that didn't sound like fear anymore. It said, "Move. Not rush, not run, just move." Because healing doesn't happen in hiding. It happens in motion. Choosing life again isn't a single moment, it's a series of choices that begin small. Getting out of bed when your mind says stay down. Speaking a truth you once swallowed. Looking someone in the eye when you'd rather look away. Every act of movement becomes a declaration. I'm still here, and I'm not pretending anymore. That's what it means to live after fear. To do the small, ordinary things that slowly rebuild your trust in the world and in yourself. I began to see that the same whisper that once saved me, "Don't move, he thinks we're dead," had done its job. It kept me alive when I needed stillness to survive. But once the danger passed, I couldn't keep living by that same rule. Survival whispers, "Be quiet." Life whispers, "Be honest." And at some point, you have to decide which one you'll listen to. You have to let the part of you that played dead finally come back to life. There's a kind of rebirth that happens after fear. It's not loud or dramatic, it's quiet, patient, almost sacred. It's in the way you start trusting laughter again, in how you let the light hit your face without flinching, in how you stop apologizing for taking up space. Because life after fear is not about being fearless. It's about being free. Fear might still walk beside you sometimes, but it no longer decides your steps. And that's what I learned, that pretending to be dead might save your body, but it can never save your soul. To truly live, you have to move again. Even if it's slow, even if it's messy. You have to let your heart remember that it wasn't made just to survive. It was made to feel, to love, to risk, to grow. That morning, when I finally stood up and looked out at the world, I didn't see danger anymore. I saw possibility. And in that simple act of standing, I made a promise to myself. Never again will I mistake stillness for safety, or silence for peace. Because survival kept me alive, but movement brought me back to life.